Shots have been fired by both CM Punk and AEW's Tony Khan and the Young Bucks. Where do we go from here? And why would Tony show that footage? I have a theory. There's controversy in the air of professional wrestling today, as last night Tony Khan decided to air the footage of backstage brawl between CM Punk and Jack Perry. It wasn't much of a brawl, to be quite honest with you. In retaliation to CM Punk's recent declarations of what happened backstage at All In, as far as in regards to the real glass situation with Jack Perry and himself. He went on the MMA Hour, Ariel Helwani's show, and just gave his side of the story, stating that he basically confronted Jack because nobody else would handle it. He basically said that he thought he was being professional by not punching him, and that he just put him in a chokehold and handled it. And then after that, he claims that he turned and told Tony Khan that he quit and um, went and hung out with some friends and eventually left the building because security kind of hinted that he might need to leave after excusing Jack Perry as well. So, um, a lot of this came down to him talking about Tony Khan too and saying that Tony's a nice guy, but he's not a boss and that he wouldn't handle things backstage. And that's why there was so much friction. Well, Tony Khan decided that the way to retaliate this was to air the footage on AEW's Dynamite last night of the backstage brawl. Um, and this footage had no sound, but it did show Punk walking up and then having a conversation with Jack Perry. Jack Perry looked pretty uncomfortable. And then the next thing you know, Punk basically blasted forward. It wasn't necessarily a punch, but it was more of a very aggressive shove, and then jabbed in there again, kind of with a secondary shove, and then grabbed him into some type of headlock maneuver. People jumped in. Samoa Joe broke it up and basically pulled Punk back. And as he was being pulled back, he leaned into the gorilla area to the right of the footage. Looked like he was aggressively pushing forward towards the gorilla area and stating his whatever points he had. And you could see someone reach over from that gorilla area, and we're assuming that that was Tony Khan, since he is the one who sits there in gorilla. And Tony Khan was most likely trying to get them to break it up and stop. This is probably the point where Punk says he quit. But AEW has released that during their reviews of the tape and of the backstage footage, that they had made the decision to fire CM Punk for that interaction. So today, everybody in the world of professional wrestling is really criticizing Tony Khan and the Young Bucks for putting this footage out there. I think that the biggest problem I had with it was the context that it was done in. So the context it was done in is the Young Bucks were sitting and they introduced this footage. And what they did with it is they did try to spin it into a promo for the upcoming AEW Dynasty pay-per-view. They basically claimed, because FTR are really good friends with CM Punk, that's why they lost their match at All In against FTR, because they were having to deal with this situation backstage as VPs of the company, and that they were unprepared for their match against FTR. I call that bullshit. But anyways, this is what the promo said, and they believe that FTR could have masterminded this whole thing to happen backstage at All In just so that they could beat the Bucks. Let's be honest, FTR could beat the Bucks without any kind of masterminding, any kind of backstage brawl. Let's put it that way for sure. But so why would Tony Khan put this footage out there? For one, Tony seems to be kind of a petty guy, and he probably wanted to retaliate against CM Punk for going on the MMA Hour and basically exposing his company and Tony Khan for their weaknesses. But also, I think that there's more to it than that. I would rather that they just moved on, to be honest with you. And please, I hope that they move on from here. I hope both Punk, WWE, AEW, Tony Khan all just move on from this point forward. But most likely that's not going to happen. You know how it is in the world of professional wrestling. The only real good reason for Tony Khan and the Young Bucks to put this cringe promo in place and then show this footage backstage is because Young Bucks have called out Jack Perry as of lately as the scapegoat of this whole situation. Jack Perry hasn't been in AEW since this incident backstage at all in last year in London. So he's been actually wrestling in New Japan this most recent months. And I feel that the only reason that this could make sense is that Jack Perry is going to come out at AEW's Dynasty during the match between the Young Bucks and FDR, and he's going to interrupt, get involved in that match, cost FTR the title. That would put some actual reasoning behind doing this whole backstage footage and this cringe promo by the Young Bucks. And this is how we're going to reintroduce Jack Perry to AEW as a heel. And he will join the faction with the Young Bucks and Okada. We're going to have the Bucks with the titles and Okada with the title. Maybe someday Jack Perry will end up with a title as well. And this would make the most sense. I'll be doing an AEW Dynasty preview and prediction show sometime next week, but this is an early preview of what to expect because I think this is exactly what Tony Khan was thinking when he said, yeah, all these months later, let's air that footage. Today, he's getting beat up. AEW is getting beat up. Some of the people backstage aren't happy about it. People everywhere kind of laughing at Tony Khan. This could be the only save face that he could possibly get out of it. And even this is a thin story.